That is Chef.
I'm just going to give us a little
Never saw her in
introduction to kind of
classes.
what we're covering
Is
in
she?
today's class.
Whoa, we're one
So
of
the theme of
only.
today's class is going to be on leftovers. So we're going to be talking about how to turn something old into something new. And our family food program, we're really fortunate. It's presented by Scotiabank. They've come on to sponsor the program. So really, really grateful to them, as well as our partners at Food Share that have been sending out the food boxes. So big thank you to those program partners for enabling us to run this with you all. So last week we talked about, the theme was don't pitch it, plant it. So we talked about reusing some of our vegetables, eating from root to leaf, as Chef was saying, really using all parts of the plant. So if you did grow anything last week, if you did kind of reuse things, we would love to hear what you did. You can throw that into the chat. I was regrowing basil. I forgot to bring it with me, but I have a little basil plant growing and it's starting to grow roots, so that's really exciting. And yeah, and this week we're going to talk about keeping kind of the same theme, really using all parts of our meals. We're going to be talking about how you can use some of your old meals to create something new while reducing food waste. So the couple recipes that Chef has in store for us is a frittata and some fish cakes, which can also be made veggie as well. So if you don't eat fish, don't worry, there's an alternative that we have for you as well. And then just a quick reminder on health and safety tips. If anyone is cooking along today, please tell us if you're cooking along. We'd love to hear who's cooking along with us. But also make sure that you're supervised by a parent or guardian if you're using equipment in the kitchen like the oven or knives, and please wash your hands before doing some food prep. So that's our quick introduction. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to throw it over to Chef Fee now to run us through today's class.
Hi, everybody. Sonia mentioned, I'm always thinking about how to. Can you see me?
Sheffy, just a quick note. Yeah, your video is just turned off, so I could see you before this, and I can't see you now.
Okay, it's because my phone is ringing.
Oh.
So, no, stop. So now it's not ringing anymore.
There we go. You're back.
So I'm using my phone to film this. So yeah, so what I've been talking about all throughout these classes is you know, how can we utilize and use all the parts of the food that we buy. I'm very aware of trying to use up what I can and use up leftovers. I'm always saving food to put into another meal. And sometimes I like to make extra food with the idea that I could wrap it well and freeze it, or cut up vegetables and store them, freeze them for a later use, just so that I don't have to throw things out. And one of the best meals that I can think of to use up leftovers is a frittata, and it's an Italian word. Basically, it's very similar to a French omelet, and many other cultures around the world, places around the world, have a variation of this dish, all different names. So this is something that I know that in my household, every Sunday morning, my mother would make a frittata, and she would just use up whatever we had in the fridge. And sometimes around special holidays, she would use certain vegetables like associated with Easter, for example, asparagus and things like, and artichokes. So I just feel that it's a really versatile dish, and I have a couple of different ways of making it. I think the way I described it in the recipe was to slowly cook it in a pan on the stove top, and then cover it, and then turn it down low, and you can keep cooking it on the stove top, or you can finish it off in the oven. But there's another way to create a frittata, and I think I may show you Well, that's a start. I think if you turn the oven up to about 450, you can just mix all your ingredients together and heat up some butter in a pan. Then you throw in your mixture all together and just put it right in the oven, just like that, without cooking it on the stovetop. And it puffs right up, and it takes about 15, 20 minutes. And that's a really quick, fast method to make a frittata. So I'm gonna get going here. I've got my pan. Oh, let's start with the eggs first. Okay, so now I'm making this for dinner, so I'm gonna use up a whole case of eggs. So let's see how to put that up there. All right, so I've got a dozen eggs here, and it's going to make quite a lot of. It's going to be quite big, and even if we don't eat it all today, I already have ideas on what I'm going to do with the leftover frittata. I'll show you when it's done what we can do with it, but I can describe some of the things we could do with it. One of my favorite things to do with leftover frittata is to take it from the fridge, bring it to room temperature a little bit, slice it up in slices, and mix it with a little bit of lemon juice and a little tiny bit of olive oil, and a little bit of salt and pepper, and then sprinkle it on top of greens and toasted croutons and maybe some toasted sunflower seeds or pumpkin seeds. And with a little bit of a dressing, you don't even really need it with the lemon and olive oil because the frittata itself will be completely flavored. So that's a delicious way to use it up. So I have a dozen eggs in my bowl here. I'm going to get my whisk. And so I have a whole dozen eggs. Now, you don't have to use a dozen eggs. You could, make 6. It just depends on the size of your pan and how many people you're feeding. So I have now you don't have to use any kind of dairy, first of all. I like to use a little dairy because I think it makes it a little bit kind of a richer in flavor. So I'm going to go ahead and add, so to 12 eggs, I've got half a cup, either milk or alternative milk or 35% whipping cream. So we're going to mix that together with some little bit of salt. Now you don't need to don't go too heavy with the salt because you can always add it later. And then we're going to add a couple of grinds of fresh black pepper, which is going to make it really tasty. And we're going to mix that all together. And in the meantime, I'm going to take my skillet. I've got a skillet right here. All right. Get this turned on. Right. Okay. Move that over. There we go. There we go. So I've got my pan on the stove, and I'm using a non-stick pan because the cleanup is much easier. So I would recommend some sort of non-stick pan. And I'm going to put a spoon of butter in there, and I'm just going to wait till it melts and just until it starts to foam. And in the meantime, while that's heating up, I have a tray of vegetables that I have left over from something we had yesterday. So I have some roasted zucchini, red pepper, a bit of yellow pepper, and some red onions. This is a really nice combination. There's lots of different things that you can put into a frittata. You can combine different kinds of meat with your vegetables or fish, or lots of cheese. I know that my kids really love broccoli and cheddar, to be honest. It's such a nice sharp cheddar. It's such a good flavor. So I'm just going to go ahead and add all of my vegetables in there. So my butter, you can see that my butter is just starting to foam. So I'm just going to go ahead and mix it all together. So everything's evenly mixed. I could have put the eggs in first and you know, but I think mixing it all together is a good idea. So I'm going to pour everything right into my pan. And it's gonna be very, it's gonna come close to the top here. There we go.
Chef, are there certain vegetables where you might like pre-cook or cook at like a different time? Like, would you always put everything in together?
So usually in this case, I like to cook my vegetables separate. So I would before I would make a frittata, or if I've made some roasted or pan seared vegetables, I would cook the vegetables separately because they all cook at different. They all cook at different. What do you call it? They're not ready at the same time, so I would cook them separately. And see, but when I'm making a frittata, generally you would throw everything you want. All your vegetables would go in at the same time. If that's the question you're asking me. Yeah, you would just mix everything right into the eggs. Likewise, I could have put the eggs in first, and I could have then placed all my whatever I had, the additions to go into it. I could do that as well. There's not just one way, to be honest. There's different ways to make this kind of thing. So as you can see what I'm doing here, so I'm just going to show you sort of what is a good, it's a good method here. So you see I'm using a spatula, a heat-proof spatula, and I'm just kind of going around the edges just to make sure. And then maybe a couple of times I'll stick in my spatula just to lightly, I don't want to scramble them. So just to lightly loosen it up so that the uncooked egg that's on top will make its way down to the bottom. And so it'll cook faster. So so there we go. Really, it's a very, very simple dish. As I said, there's just so many different combinations. And as we all know, you get I have 3 different vegetables here. They all have different nutrients and minerals and vitamins. And also, I've got the perfect egg with all its all the vitamins and minerals that and protein that come from the yolk and the whites of the egg. So this is a very, very it's a cost efficient and also very, very healthy. So there you go. So while that's cooking, I'm just going to place it over here. Where am I going to place it? I'm going to place it over here. Okay, let's move this over here.
How long would you leave that overheat for?
I would leave this overheat for approximately, I'm going to guess if I would put a lid on that and leave it, I would lower my heat and, hold on. So, there we go. I would lower the heat and maybe about 10, 15 minutes it would be ready. But I'm going to finish this one off in my oven. So that's why I took it off the heat. So I can get ready for the next thing that we're making. But as I said, yeah, you could leave it on your stovetop, covered, turn it low, and just until it's set. You can keep checking it. You don't want to overcook it unless you like it that way. But yeah, just till it's set. You still want it to be a little bit creamy. And you notice that I didn't put any cheese in this particular frittata. I'm going to grate it on top afterwards. I have some Pecorino Romano, which is an Italian cheese. It's a hard cheese. I'm going to grate some of that on top, and it's going to taste really, really good. But I could have thrown in anything else. I could have thrown in cheddar or mozzarella. I could have put herbs and basil. Thyme would have been really good in this as well. So something I wanted to tell you about that. Okay, well, it's going to come back to me. Yeah.
Just thinking before we move on to the next thing, there hasn't been any questions in the chat, but if anybody wants to ask any questions about cooking frittata, this would be maybe a good time. You can feel free to take yourself off mute if you have any questions about the frittata. I don't see anyone asking, so we'll carry on. But if you do have any questions, just feel free to throw them into the chat, and then we can pause again for questions later.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just gonna go get my bowl. Sorry.
And are we moving on to the fish cakes next?
Yes. So I have my bowl all ready here. So I'm going to move on to the fish cakes because it's going to take a little bit of time to get this going. Maybe I'll put the pan on here, get it ready. I have to turn it really, really low. Hold on. Oh, okay. Yeah, I want to get going on the fish cakes. So we had some fish yesterday, and I have some leftover fish here. So I just took some white fish that I had some frozen fish actually, the kind that come in the big bags. So I just roasted them with a little bit of oil, some salt and pepper, a little bit of lemon zest on top. So I roasted it in the oven for not long. It took me no more than like 9 minutes to cook. So we had this leftover fish. So if you don't eat fish or you don't like fish, you can use other things. What I wanted to mention, you can always add things like mashed potatoes. So even if you have a little bit of fish, you can always like mash some potatoes that have been cooked or your leftover potatoes, and you can add that to the fish cake as well. Sweet potatoes work as well. So, you know, you can play around with the different amounts of fish. You could be half mashed potatoes. You could, you could just, there's no set amount really, to be honest. So I have this fish here, and I'm just gonna kind of crumble it up with my hands a little bit, just so that it's into smaller pieces than what it is. We're gonna get that right in here.
So there was a quick question that came in. I know you said you use like a white fish. Is any fish okay to use?
Yeah, any fish is okay to use. You could use, I mean, most like flaky fish. So any kind of white fish, salmon, trout, tinned salmon, tinned tuna work really well. Sometimes you can get those big cans, you know, as well. Like they sell those kind of larger cans if you've got a lot of people to feed. And another thing, which I don't think I mentioned in the recipe, I mean, this may sound weird, but it's not. Let's say you had some leftover, let's say you had some fish in your fridge, you thought you were gonna cook it and you never did, so it's been sitting around. It's still okay to eat. And, you know, and you only have a little bit of that, but you want to use it up. You can always open up a couple of tins of tuna or salmon. They don't even have to be the same fish. Some can be cooked fish and some can be raw fish. If you're going to use raw fish in this recipe, after you're going to brown them on both sides. You might want to just put them on a sheet pan and stick them in the oven for a few minutes, like 5 minutes or so. So it's kind of very versatile. Yeah, you can mix the cooked and the raw fish as well. Okay, so you can see I've got my fish kind of flaked in the bowl here. You can't tell. So to this, I'm going to add. I've got a few things already prepared here. I've got some celery, which is going to give it a nice crispness. I've got some green onions, which is going to give it a really nice flavor. Now I've got some coriander. I like coriander. You don't have to use coriander, but I like it's a good flavor. Maybe you've got some parsley lying around, or maybe some chives. I mean, anything like that would work. Now I have some lemon juice. I'm going to add, but I think, what did I say? A tablespoon or so of lemon juice. Well, I'm going to add all of it because I like lemon juice. There you go. And now I'm adding a little bit of breadcrumbs to, as I said, you could use mashed potatoes. You could use grains as well in place of, or beans, mashed beans as well. You can add things like that to a cake, and just to get it, holding everything together. I mean, as well, you could use eggs, but I actually going to use mayonnaise today. Yeah, I've got some mayonnaise here, so I'm going to add a little bit of mayonnaise. I'm going to get that all okay. And I also like to add a little bit of Dijon mustard. If you don't have Dijon, you don't have to use it, but I have some, so I'm just going to put just a little bit of Dijon, maybe like a teaspoon or two of Dijon mustard. Okay. And then I'm just going to just kind of mix everything together. We're going to mix it all together. Just till you want it to be quite well mixed and not super chunky. Yeah. Yeah, there we go. Now, if you find that it's a little bit too I don't know, it's not going to stick together, just add either more like whatever you're using, the egg or the mayonnaise, or add a little bit of mayonnaise, or sorry, breadcrumbs, or anything that's soft that'll bind it together. Okay, so I think that's good enough. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cook up a few here. I can turn this back on. There we go. So I'm going to put I have a larger nonstick pan, so I'm going to use that. And I have just a little bit of oil. I'm using a little bit of, what do I have? This is just the canola oil, so I'm going to add a little bit of that to my pan. Now, I'm just going to heat this up slowly. Slowly. I don't want to burn too much. Lower that down a little bit. Lower that down. There we go. Okay. All right. So I've got my mix here. Now, to this side, now you don't have to do this either. I just thought this was a good opportunity to show you how to coat something with breading. There's many different things that you could coat with breading. Vegetable slices like eggplant or zucchini. You could also, you know, chicken parmesan has a nice crunchy bread coating. So there's lots of different fish. You could do this with fish. Anyway, so what I've got here is I've got a couple of eggs right here, with a little bit of salt and pepper, and I just added like a tablespoon of water just to loosen it up a little bit. So we've got the egg mixture, and let's move this over for a second. All right. And I've got some flour right here as well, with also just a little bit of salt, pepper. You could actually add things, different flavoring. You had a little paprika or some onion powder, Old Bay. I'm not sure if anybody's ever used Old Bay spice, but it would actually work really well if you sprinkle a little bit in the flour here. So that's ready. And over here, I've got some breadcrumbs. I've got some panko crumbs. They're just a little bit coarser than regular breadcrumbs. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a small handful. Now, ideally, you would do this all ahead of time and put them on a plate and put them in the fridge. That's what you would do. Okay. So because something like this, once it sits in the fridge for you know, maybe 20, 15 minutes, it gets nice and the fat sort of congeal, and it just becomes a little bit firmer and easier to work with. But I'm going to risk it now, and I'm going to just go for it right now. So basically what we're going to do with this, I just made little tiny patties. You could make them as big or small as you like. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this. So first you're going to want to put it in the flour. You're just going to want to sprinkle it on, just like that. You want to shake off the excess flour. You don't want big globs of flour. Also, I'm probably not doing this. Oh, okay, it's all right. And so next we're going to dip it in the egg. You want to make sure it's coated. You take it out of there. Just make sure you drain off the eggs. And next we're going to place it in the breadcrumbs. And yeah, we're just going to lightly coat it like that. Just like that. I'm going to do another one. I'm going to do 3. How's that? We'll get 3 going here. And I can do the rest after.
So, Sheffy, while you're coding those, a couple questions came up just around the coding. Is it possible, I guess one, is it possible to do a version without any coding at all? How would that work?
Yeah,
And then,
that,
because there's some people asking about kind of modifications in terms of, not using egg, not using breadcrumbs, and what would those modifications look like? Either just no coding, or is there an alternative that we could offer?
you could, if it was just specifically egg is the problem, I would use milk. I would use milk. If you're just talking about no eggs, that would be an option for somebody who doesn't want to eat egg or can't eat eggs. You don't actually really need the coating. I just if you put these in the fridge, as I said, for 15-20 minutes, and then you sear them off in a hot pan like this, it'll give it a nice, maybe not super crispy, but a nice firm exterior. That yeah. And I often don't bread fish cakes myself, to be honest. I just thought that it was just a nice, a good way to show the technique to everybody. Okay, so I'm just going to do one more here, just like that. Can it? Anyway, so we'll do this. Oops, we'll do this one more time here. Okay, into the flour. Shake off the excess. Into the egg. Into the bread. Okay, that's it. I'm going to wipe my hands here. Okay. Okay, so I've got my pan. I think it's pretty hot, so I better turn it down. These burners are very hot. Okay. Okay, so cool that down for a second. I'm going to move this out of the way. There we go. So I'm just going to place. I'm just going to place right in here like this. Oh, this one's a bit soft. That's fine. There we go. Okay. Okay. All right. So I've got them in the pan, and I'm just going to give them a little tap. Well, you don't have to do that. It's kind of close to the oil. You have to be careful. So I can already smell. The lemon coming through. I mean, there's other things you could use too. You could, lime juice works well. As I said, lots of different herbs work well. Scallops work really well if you like scallops, which is what some people wouldn't think, or shrimps. You happen to have a bag of, okay, so while this is browning, whoops. Oh yeah, I'm gonna flip this over. You can see. Like so, okay. Because this is browning so quickly, you can see that. Sure, if you can see that. Got a really nice crispy crust. So I'm gonna turn it down just a little bit here. There we go. Now, does anybody have any questions about the cakes?
If you do have any questions, you can take yourself off mute, no worries, or you can ask them in the chat if you want to. I think the question about the coding was a big one, just in terms of some people are gluten-free and no egg, and both gluten-free and no egg. I know some folks on our calls are no dairy as well. So it sounds like there are lots of alternatives, though, in terms of not using a coating.
Yes, but there, I mean, if you want to use some of the refined starches in that, that works well instead of flour. You could use rice flour, tapioca starch, potato starch. Often they sort of, you could use like things like semolina, which is ground corn. Semolina works well as a coating. Sometimes you could experiment with things like quinoa, things like that, things that you can coat on the outside, or sesame seeds. as long as you keep the heat low, you don't want to burn the quinoa, the quinoa or the sesame seeds. That works well instead of bread. You just have to, you might have to make it a couple of times just to get it right. You have to experiment with it.
One of the questions I was thinking of, particularly for folks who don't eat egg, is there any alternative for how to make a frittata without eggs?
That's a good question. How to make a frittata without eggs?
I was thinking maybe tofu for something that's maybe a little bit more quiche-like, but I don't think it'd be a frittata.
Well, I think you're right. I think you'd still get that. It would be similar. It would be similar in texture. I think if you could try. I've never tried making a tofu, but it would seem like you could create something similar. You could create something similar with tofu. You could blend the tofu and add your chunks of cooked vegetables or fish or meat, and well, maybe that's something I'll have to try the next time I make a frittata. Okay, let's see. Yep, they're coming along nicely. They're just about, I mean, the good thing is, I mean, I use cooked fish, so I'm not worried about that. I just want to make sure, you cook off the flour and that kind of thing. So I just want to, my quiche is over here and it's out of the oven. I'm just going to put it on a plate. There we go. So this is the end. This is my frittata. You can see that it's quite puffy, and I finished it off in the oven, and I just flipped it over into the onto the plate, and I'm going to cut into it right now.
Nice. We can see it. It looks like it's gotten very kind of golden brown.
It's gotten a little bit golden brown on the outside. It's true. Yes, that's usually what happens. And I'm also just going to turn these off for now. That's ready as well. I'm just going to get my knife because I have it. And I put it, oh, it's over here. Okay, so I'm just going to cut into this and I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to hold a piece up. There we go. So as you can see, I can show, you can actually get a look at that.
Yep, we can see that. We can see all the veggies inside. It looks really good.
And you could easily serve something like this with you could turn it into like little cubes, like appetizer squares, like that, something like that. You could put what do I do with this? Oh, it's right here. You could put a little pesto on top, or even like a little bit of a herbed cream cheese or goat cheese, something creamy, ricotta cheese, and you could put a little, which I don't have here with me. But a little bit, the whipped cheese, if you like to eat cheese, or just maybe just a little bit of salsa, just like that. A little bit of, what do I have here? I have coriander, so I'll just put a little bit of a coriander leaf there. And that's kind of a pretty, sort of like a pretty little appetizer you could serve to, your family or friends, just like that.
That looks both so delicious and so fancy, like you're ready for a cocktail party.
I am just about ready for a cocktail party, isn't it? You're right. I'm just joking, everybody. No, well, okay, so I'm gonna leave this over here. It's very cute. Okay, so as I said, now I can at least show you what I was talking about. You could do something like this and then slice. You get thin slices, and that something like that could easily go onto a salad. As I said, it could I think I mentioned earlier. So you get some nice slices there as well, and you could make avocado toast and lay this on top. It's sort of endless. You could put it in a wrap. Some cheese with some tomatoes or some salsa. So it really goes a long way. And if you wrap it well, it lasts quite a while in the fridge as well. So you can have a healthy snack and prepare it different ways. So that's kind of why I like the frittata. But now we've got a fish cake here. So this is ready. So I'm just going to I'm going to bring one over to you just to take a look. You can see it's sort of golden brown and on both sides. So I probably shouldn't be using the knife there. There you go. Golden brown.
You can see it.
Okay, perfect. And this, you could serve it alongside any kind of salad. Maybe some steamed rice would be nice, with maybe a little slice of lemon, which would be delicious. As a matter of fact, I like fish cakes with lemon, or make a little lemon mayonnaise. And just a couple of classes ago, I think I demonstrated an easy way to sort of spruce up regular mayonnaise that you might have in your fridge. If you take a cup of mayonnaise and an egg yolk and a quarter cup or so of olive oil, you mix those things really, really well together, and add maybe some lemon zest, some lemon juice, tiny bit of garlic. It makes a really, that's the kind of dressing I showed you how to make a few classes ago. Just sort of spruces up plain mayonnaise, but maybe you could add some, instead of adding, let's see, what would I change there? Maybe I'd add some chopped pickles. Some pickles or sweet pickles added to that kind of mayonnaise that I just described. That would go like like a tartar sauce. That would go really, really nice here with this fish cake. So I'm going to cut into this now. Oh, it's crunchy. I can hear that. Crunchy on the outside, nice and tender on the inside. And this as well would be great in a sandwich, like a nice fish bun, fish on a bun. Just, serve it with some fresh vegetables and a little white salad on the side, and that's dinner. So I'm going to go ahead and taste it, because I should taste it. It's very tasty, really bright with lemon, and the coriander. I don't even mind using the coriander stems, because I like having different textures and things like this. So you've got the crunchy bread on the outside, I've got the celery in there, and I've got like some coriander stems. So they all offer a different sort of texture in your mouth. And with that bright lemon juice, a little bit of zinginess from the mustard. It's I think you'll like it. Yeah. So there you go. We've got fish cakes, and I've used up a lot of leftovers. And so that makes me very happy. And there we go.
That was so great. You've made me very hungry. Even though I don't eat fish, I'm now inspired to try and make a variation of it to recreate.
Oh, yeah.
Recreate what fish tastes like.
Well, as I said, lots of different things work really well instead of the fish. You can experiment with some, beans, mashed beans work really well on the cake. Mm-hmm. You can put chopped onions, shallots. Actually, I would have put shallots in those little small onions, but I use green onions, which are just fine, taste good. But you could experiment with different types of onions as well, and different herbs. I did want to show you though. So a few classes ago, I put the ends of vegetables into some water. So I'm not. Did we do this last week?
Yeah,
I think
we did it last week.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So this is 7 days worth of. Can you see that? I've got some new shoots coming up. For this is a romaine lettuce bottom, and so I've got some new shoots coming up. And this is the celery that I put in water, and so the leaves are just starting to come out. I didn't have a lot of notice with the avocado pit that we did. I haven't seen a change yet, and I haven't seen a change in the basil. So there we go. So does anybody have any questions for me?
What if the fish cakes are falling apart? I couldn't use egg, but my fish cakes are kind of falling apart.
So what did you use for your fish cake? Did you actually use fish? Did you follow a recipe?
I followed your recipe with tuna fish. and
Okay.
I used crumbled
Oh.
Rice Krispies instead of breadcrumbs.
Oh, that's a good idea. I often use Rice Krispies last minute when I'm making. So if they're falling apart, I'm gonna suggest what I think might be the issue, but maybe not. Did you really drain your tuna well? Did you
I
squeeze?
did, but I maybe added too much mayonnaise in the end.
Okay,
Vegan mayonnaise.
okay. You know what?
Maybe.
But you know what you could try doing?
Yeah.
If you want to wait, don't finish. Like, did you already cook all of them? Do you have them all in the pan already, or?
No, I only put a few in.
Okay, so if you could wait, I would put it in the fridge or chill it real freezer for a little bit. You want to get it. You might want to set it over a drain. If you might even set it over a strainer and put it in the fridge with a plate on it and a tin can. You know what I mean?
Yes, it doesn't look super moist though.
But they're falling apart. Well, did you make when you pressed them together? Did you make sure that they were nice and, you know, when you make a meatball, you kind of squeeze the air out of it too. Like you have to kind of make sure that it's all together.
Okay. Would maybe adding a little more rice.
Steve, I wish I could.
More crumbs.
I can't see. I can't see for some.
So I think the question was, is adding a little bit more like Rice Krispies or like, I guess something starchy, would that help?
Oh, yes, definitely. Sorry, if they're too wet, cook them all. Yes, add more of something, whatever you're using to soak up the, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you got more rice, use more Rice Krispies. 100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. They're still gonna taste good. They smell good.
Oh, good. Excellent. Yeah, mine. I thought they tasted good too. So, yeah. This is what's really good about doing this kind of thing, is that sometimes you just you know, following a recipe is what many of us need to do, but learning how to correct things for making things, and just having the confidence, you know, to just switch things up if you think you have to. That's learning, if you ask me. So.
While people are thinking of questions, I just went to grab my little gardening experiment from last week. I know you can't see, Chef, but I put basil in. So I know Chef said it didn't work, but it's definitely growing little roots. So just, I think like cooking, trying to regrow things sometimes requires a little bit of experimentation and patience and just building confidence with it, like everything else. So, but yeah, Sierra, it sounds like you've definitely been learning a lot, and I know practicing each week and using different modifications for things.
Trying Pinterest. I don't cook enough, but Pinterest is my friend. That's where I got the idea for the Rice Krispies, was a Pinterest gluten-free fish cake recipe.
Oh, that's good. Rice. Yeah, I use it for other things, crispy, like waffles and pancakes. I'd always throw in a cup of Rice Krispies into my batter, but right at the last minute. You don't let it soak it up. Just before you cook them. It's sometimes nice crispy.
I wonder, does anybody else on the call have any questions? I'm not sure if anyone else is cooking at home, or even if like what kind of leftovers you have in your fridge right now, what you might be trying this week. Would love to hear from the other folks who are on the call with us.
I can share something I made is coming forward. So I had a tin of baked beans. So I think we all know, we've all seen a can of, you know, baked beans. And, you know, often they have a little bit of a smoky flavor. So I seared off some meat. I mean, you could use any kind of, I mean, not lamb. You could use chicken or pork or beef. I had some side ribs, and so I used the beans as a base, and I sautéed a bunch of onions and carrots, some root vegetables. I threw in a tin or two of the baked beans that I had sitting around for a while. So, and I had already sort of browned the meat already on the grill, browned that, and I added a little bit of stock that I had and put the meat into this mixture with the baked bean, the tinned beans, and threw it in the oven at a really low, threw it in the oven at maybe 300-degree oven for about 2 or 3 hours. And it was just a nice, it was a good way to use up those beans. It was a really nice stew. So I'd never used those beans in that way before. So.
Nice. That's a great idea. We also had a really lovely message from Hina, who said this was her first session. She learned a lot today. So
well, that's nice.
Thank you so much, Hina, for joining us. It's really nice to see new faces here, as well as faces that have been joining every week. Does anybody else have any questions or anything that they'd like to share with us? Any ideas or things that you'd like to see us do in our future sessions? We do have, I'm just gonna, I mentioned it in the chat, but I'll mention it again. We are doing a survey right now of the program for those who have been with us since week 1. If you've been getting our email since June and you've been getting the food box since June, please fill out this survey. It really helps us check in on how the program is doing and how we can serve you better. And then the question, how many sessions there are in total? So we're in week 5. If you've just joined us, so you'll be joining us from week 5 to 8, so 4. If you've been with us from the beginning, there's 8 sessions in total. And we do have recordings ready to go. So we're going to send out a link to all the recordings from the previous week in our email tomorrow. So please look out for that. And you can go back and watch anything that you've missed or look up recipes that you've missed in the previous week. So even if you didn't join previous classes, you can always go back online and view them. Sorry, I wasn't sure if Sierra, if you were looking to say something. I thought I saw you come off mute for a second, but no pressure if you weren't.
I was trying to show, but I haven't figured out how to get rid of my background.
Oh.
That needs my face to work properly. I was going to show you a picture of the fish cakes I made.
Yeah.
I only cooked a few of them. We're not quite ready for dinner yet. So I think I added some more crumbs, rice crumbs to my mixture, and I'm going to put it in the fridge before I cook the rest in maybe 15, 20 minutes.
That's good.
But the seasoning's delicious. I'm at my parents' house and they had cilantro and green onion.
Oh, good. I'm glad. That's great.
So thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'm sure it'll all turn out.
Yeah, and we love to see creations. So if anybody is cooking and taking photos, we'd love to see them. I've just dropped my email in the chat, so please feel free to send us some photos of your creations. It's always great to see what you're cooking and what you're inspired by too. Okay, if there are no more questions, then I think we can end it here. Just wanted to say thank you again to everyone joining us. Really, really nice to spend this hour with everyone in the week.
Yeah, thank you everybody for watching. We'll see you next week. A whole bunch of new ideas for you to try.